Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Angela Pearson.
I'm Paul Santa.
And I'm Matt Brooks.
We're thrilled to be joined today by a fantastic British actor and TV presenter. She got her first acting gig aged 11 and trained at the Italia Conte Academy of Theatre Arts. Her stage credits include End of the Rainbow, Annie, Grease, Boogie Nights and Calendar Girls the Musical. She became a household name in the 90s, tickling the nation's funny bone in sketches with Les Dennis on the Russ Abbot Show, before getting her own weekly sketch series, The Lisa Maxwell Show, on BBC One. She reportedly cannot bring herself to watch the US sitcom Frasier because of a misunderstanding when auditioning for the role of Daphne. She told the writers the script wasn't funny enough. But Hollywood's loss was the UK's gain. For 7 years throughout the noughties, she played DS Samantha Nixon on The Bill. She's had starring roles in Deep, EastEnders and Hollyoaks. She was a regular panellist on Loose Women, and despite admitting she had no idea how to cook, she made it through to the semi-finals of Celebrity MasterChef in 2018. But our listeners will perhaps recognise her best as Lily Lineker, the chirpy, bit ragged round the edges owner of Richie and Eddie's favourite Love Bureau. Welcome, Lisa Maxwell. It's a pleasure to have you here talking bottom with us today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little bit ragged around the edges today as well.
Not at all, not at all. Now, Lisa, we've inputted your data and we'd like to begin with finding out how and why you went into acting. What did you love about it as a kid?
Well, I didn't really go in it to do acting. I basically, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I grew up in a council estate at the Elephant and Castle, and there was a girl who lived across the road in the flats opposite who was what we would consider quite posh. And my mum really liked the way that she spoke. And my mum spoke to her mum. And then it turns out this girl went to a school called Italia Conte, which is a stage school. She had elocution lessons. So my mum said, oh, what are they? You know, and her mum explained. And so she enrolled me for what she thought was elocution lessons, but they were actually drama lessons. So I'd go every Saturday morning to do these so-called elocution lessons. But that's when I think I properly got the acting bug. And then I auditioned for the school full-time when I was 11 and got a scholarship. And off I went. And then I, joined the agency with the school and they send you up for auditions. And I became a full equity member when I was 12 and sort of never looked back from there, really.
Fantastic. And were you in the same year as Bonnie Langford and Lena Zavaroni?
I was, yeah. I was same class as Bonnie and Lena, and it was a really. There were only about 100 of us in the whole school in those days. It was quite an unknown way to go with your kids' education, and everybody thought like my mum was totally mad by sending me there. But there were proper performing children there. So it was, the thing about the school was that someone like Bonnie, for example, who was working in Just William as Violet Elizabeth Bott, that school would allow her time off to go and do these things, whereas a normal school or, a proper educational authority might have something to say about it. So Bonnie was there, and Lena, who obviously became very famous for winning Opportunity Knocks, and then obviously probably more well known, unfortunately, for possibly being the first person that anyone had ever known about having the eating disorder anorexia nervosa, which at my school was quite commonplace. But we didn't really know the name of it, but we knew that there were girls with eating disorders. And Lena sadly passed away as a result of that. So it was quite a prolific year for good ways and bad ways, but a great training base, definitely, for going into showbiz.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just to ask, did comedy draw you in more back then, or was it straight acting?
Do you know what? I've always been a bit of a Mickey taker. I think growing up, without sounding too heavy, I grew up in a single parent family and was born out of wedlock in 1960, and that was quite a sort of stigmatized environment to grow up in. So I learned really early on to kind of bat away any negativity or or avoid any personal questions by making a joke and getting people off the track. So I didn't realize that actually I'd been doing it until much later on in life. And various boyfriends I had always said to me, do not take anything seriously. Do you that? So I think it's always been there. But of course it's a proper skill, isn't it? When you look at the likes of Rik and Ade and people like that, they're just I've sort of dabbled a bit, and I've had some good opportunities in that world, but I wouldn't by any means call myself like proficient as a funny person, because it takes years and years.
I think you're being quite modest there, Lisa. You've got a good comedy CV behind you. Have you, when it comes to comedy, do you prefer? Have you got a preference over sitcoms or sketches? Because you've done both, obviously. So is there one thing that you tend to lean towards more than another?
The thing is, Paul, I mean, when you're going on in a business, you go wherever the work is, and I love anything I'm doing at the time I'm doing it, because it means I'm employed, and that's always good. But I think probably if I had to choose, it would be sitcoms, just because, or ideally comedy drama, just because you get time to kind of really develop a character a bit more. With sketches, I mean, one of the things that I didn't like about sketch shows, and I still don't like it now, and I struggled back in the day, even when I did the Lisa Maxwell show and the sketches were written specifically for me, was that you have literally no time at all to establish a character, let everybody know how funny she is, and then deliver a tagline at the end of it. So everything gets like really on the nose, really broad, that there's no room for subtleties. And I think perhaps when you get like a chance to play a character in a sitcom, you get a chance to kind of be a little bit more, I don't know, a bit more kind of cerebral with the character. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like the sketches, due to the turnover of doing it, like it kind of has to go for the low-hanging fruit then a lot of the time. Whereas with sitcoms, you can kind of, as you say, take your time a bit more and sort of seed things a bit more.
Yeah. I'd much rather play the truth better at over the years. I think for me, sketch shows were a great platform to sort of get my profile there and sort of show people that I could be funny. But equally, you can learn some really bad habits with sketches, because as I said, you've got to literally just sort of hammer it home from the get-go. That, and I really like, things like The Office and stuff that we've come to love over the years. And I think we'll talk about Bottom, obviously that's why I'm here, but that was its own special creation, because that managed to straddle broad, on the nose fart gags with proper, subtle, clever character development. I mean, these characters had real pathos. You really felt the pain of someone like Rik. The fact that he couldn't get a girlfriend was hysterically funny, but also heartbreaking.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that's why it's so unique,
Yeah. Speaking of sitcoms, I promise you we'll ask you lots of questions about Bottom. I just wanted to ask you one before we ask about Bottom, which is, would you mind telling us the story of how you auditioned for Daphne and Frasier? And what happened?
God, I have to open a vein every time I tell this story. What happened was, I just want to put it into context, because it sounds like I was being really grand and critiquing the writing of Frasier, which is beyond critique, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, I had done the Lisa Maxwell show for the BBC here, and my agent had introduced me to a high-profile, big shop manager in LA who said, why don't you come out and try your luck? And so I was a bit like, yeah, okay. And my agent paid my fare, and it was all happened very easily and very quickly. And so I was sent around to a series of meetings at all of these big American studios, like Paramount and 20th Century Fox and Lorimar and all of these places that you'd only ever seen at the end of movies, and everywhere I went, I got a really positive reaction. And that wasn't just through my doing. I think it was a bit like, it was at that particular time I'd sort of captured the zeitgeist a bit with Tracy Ullman was doing her sketch show in America, become a big star. I was doing a similar show over here, and they were looking for what the next Tracy Ullman. So anyway, I ended up coming away from those 10 days with 3 offers from big studios. Paramount wanted to sign me up, 20th Century Fox production company wanted to sign me up, and Lorimar. And there was like this weird bidding war over who was going to sign me. And in the middle of, I'd never even been to America on holiday, and all this was happening, and it was so sensational. And so with that kind of background, I then go to America. I'm signed to Paramount in the end. that was the deal we went with. And I'm given a car from their fleet of cars. I have an apartment that they paid for in Studio City. I have a drive-on parking space outside the Lucy bungalow, which is the I Love Lucy head office, where Lucy and Desi Arnaz created that show. No one has a drive-on. You have to park in the street and walk on. You know, it was crazy, 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 sensational times.
Yeah.
So my agent calls and says, you have to go and meet every producer and writer on the lot at Paramount. Now, Paramount make Cheers and lots of other huge sitcoms. So I met all the writers from Cheers, and I knew all of these people. So after about 4 months of meeting everyone, I then get a call about going for a meeting about a new spin-off from Cheers that they're writing for Kelsey Grammer. And they're looking for an English actress. And my agent's like, they've just put this character in. There was no character until Paramount signed you. So go and see the guys. You know them all. It's just, you know, just to chat through the script and everything. So that was the background, just to put it into context. I'm sent the sides. We didn't even use the word sides in those days. Everyone uses the word sides now. But back then I was like, they're going to send me some what? You know, what? They're going to send me the sides of what? And then my agent explained what sides were.
Just so in case our listeners don't know, can you let us know what they are?
So they are individual pages from a script, the sides, like this side and that side of a script, as opposed to a whole script.
Right.
So they sent me the sides, and in the sides, it said that this character, Daphne Moon, was from Manchester. So I said to my agent, what do we do about this meeting? The script says she's from Manchester, and they've sent me sides. Presumably, do I need to learn them? My agent said, yeah, you need to just make yourself familiar with them. They'll probably get you to read something. But they know that you're not from Manchester. So she was a bit like, Manchester, schmanchester, just do you. They love you. They've signed you, blah, blah, blah. So I walk into this room thinking, they love me. They know what I am. And so I said, I'm happy to do Mancunian if you want me to. And one of the lines in the script, it was the first line, and it was Daphne Moon's entrance as she's about to go for her interview to become Frasier's dad's home help. And the first line is, she's ringing the doorbell. Frasier opens the doorbell. She's fiddling with her bra strap. She's sort of sorting herself out before she goes in. And he catches her and she says, oh, you know, you caught me with my hand in the biscuit tin. And that was the line I didn't understand. And it wasn't like I didn't understand it. I just didn't kind of know what it meant. And it was probably really thick of me. But they said, do you have any questions about the script? And I said, and I mentioned that line, you know, kind of casually. And they said, oh, well, would you prefer to say cookie? Would that be a better way of delivering the line? Or so is your problem with biscuit or you know? And I said, no, I don't have a problem with biscuit. And they said, but so what do you have a problem with? And I said, I don't have a problem with any of it. I just, I've never referred to my bosom, like, as a biscuit tin. And they said, so have you referred to your bosom as like a cookie jar? Or, and no, I haven't referred to it as that either. Yeah. And so I think there was quite a bit lost in translation, and I sort of didn't understand it. And then it became one of those things where it suddenly became all we were talking about was this flipping line. And I just thought I should ask a question because they asked me if I had any. I thought it made me look smart if I asked a question. I didn't really care. Yeah. And then it became about that anyway. So we did the thing, and I did it with a Mancunian accent, and I, you know, sort of said, "Oh, you caught me with my hand in the biscuit tin," you know. I did it like that, and that was fine. And you know, I sort of showed that I could do a, you know, Mancunian and everything. That was fine. And then I left, and then the next morning, my agent called. Not even hello, how are you? Can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
She just said to me, and my agent was this fantastic New York Jewess called Sylvia Gold, and she said, and she was with a big agency called ICM, and we did the deal because we agreed to swap shoes. She said, "I'll sign you up, Lisa. I'm telling you now. I want to do a deal with you, but I don't know where this is going to go." She said, "But if you give me those shoes, we can do a deal." She liked my shoes, so we swapped shoes. She rang me up and she didn't even say hello, Lisa. She said, "How can you fuck up to that degree?"
God.
And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, the meeting yesterday, she said, with Paramount, with the guys at Frasier, you didn't get the part. And I was like, okay, I didn't. Well, first of all, I wasn't aware that I was actually auditioning and there were other people going for it. I thought it was a meeting and da da da. And I, honest to God, this makes me sound like such an asshole. I thought I was going to discuss a role that had been created because I'd been signed to the studio and all of these mad things were happening to me. So this didn't seem completely out of the realms of normality. And I said, so what happened? She said, well, they gave the part to somebody that didn't fucking assassinate the script. And I was like, oh my God. So that's what happened. Wow. And it was really, it's not even a funny story. It's quite a tragic story because it, I make a joke and say it's not like it became a big hit or anything. It couldn't have been a bigger hit.
Yeah, but the thing is, going into that with the information that you had, like, completely understandable why you thought that you were a shoo-in.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of hand in the biscuit tin. I think I'd have said, what does this mean?
I have to say, if someone had said to me it was just a straightforward audition, everybody's going in, level playing field, and if they asked me if I had any questions, I would have said, no, I love this script. And I would have left it at that. But it was a really weird thing. I was 27. This stuff was happening. I was living in Archway in North London, getting these faxes, because we did everything on fax in those days, these faxes coming through with the Paramount logo on them. It was just mind-blowing. But yes, and I know people probably won't believe it, but I'm really glad it didn't work out for me, because I would have ended up staying in California, which for someone like me who was like chronically insecure about the way I looked and things like that, I would have ended up completely doolally. I would have had everything done. I would have been, I've had ribs removed like Dolly Parton, and I've had, everything lifted and tied in a bow at the back of my head, Yeah. So it was good that I wasn't able to kind of find myself in that very, very, very competitive environment.
Thank you for recounting the story. I apologize for making you go over it again. Thank you though for telling it.
You should have seen her face while she was forced to recount this, viewers. Yeah, she hated every man.
It is agony, I have to say, but it is a good story because it's such a big show, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful story. I mean, obviously everyone's aware of the show, but as you say, then you wouldn't have had the life that you've led, and everything kind of happens for a reason, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Keeping with comedy, obviously Rik and Ade are very well known for sort of being formative in UK alternative comedy. Do you recall your first sort of time experiencing it? Did you go down to the Comedy Store and see an act or anything like that? Do you recall sort of the formations of alternative comedy?
I do recall so-called alternative comedy, which a lot of people have an issue with that kind of name anyway, because it's either funny or it isn't. And I remember alternative comedy really coming through, and it was through the Comedy Store and all those kind of places. I was doing real mainstream comedy at the time. I did 4 series of the Les Dennis Laughter Show, 3 series of the Russ Abbot Show. I did like loads of appearances on Jasper Carrot Confidential, and all of these mainstream comedy shows. And I'm a stage school kid, I was really intimidated by these very well-educated people that had decided that comedy was for them. And it was a much more intelligent, subtle approach to comedy. And I was really scared of people from the alternative comedy scene. And I had been to see gigs and stand-ups, and I felt there was a bit like a them and us situation at the time. Russ Abbot, for me, I think is one of the funniest men that has ever been on British telly. I really do think he's a proper comic genius and a brilliant comedic actor. But there was a bit of snobbery coming through, I felt, perhaps around the time of alternative comedy versus mainstream, like people were kind of looking down their noses at little and large that were, pulling in massive figures on a Saturday night. And you've got Ben Elton doing Saturday Night Live, the English version. Was it Saturday? It was Saturday Night Live, wasn't it? Ben Elton?
I think here it was just called Saturday Live.
Right, yeah. And I remember doing an impression of Ben Elton. I did a character called Bonita Elton, who was like a female stand-up, goes, oh, a little bit of satire, a little bit, that sort of. And and remember being really scared about doing it, because I just thought, who am I to take on these? These are really, really clever people that are doing great things. And I had a real kind of inferiority complex about them and us at the time. And also when I did the Lisa Maxwell show, they really wanted to try and bridge a gap between mainstream comedy, like the sketch shows, broken comedy, and the sort of things that the comic strip people were doing, you know. And so they tried to make my characters more three-dimensional. The sketches were longer, which was a huge mistake, because if you're doing a sketch show, I think I don't know, I think there's a fine line between, because if people don't like the character or they don't get what you're doing with broken comedy, you need to get off it and get onto something else really quickly. And I think we tried to develop the characters a bit more and give it a bit more kind of street cred, if you like. Those words were used a lot around that time. And so when I was asked to do Bottom, I was so flattered.
Do you recall? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I recall almost like it was yesterday. My manager, Mike Hughes, who was Russ Abbott's manager, Les Dennis's manager, Freddie Starr's manager, couldn't have got a more mainstream management, who'd been sent a script by the production company, by the BBC, saying that they'd really, really like me to consider, it was a straight offer, consider playing the role of Lily Lineker. And my agent said, I'm going to bite the script over because they need an answer quite quickly, because it's the last episode in the series and they're shooting as we go. So my agent bite the script over and I read it and I thought he'd sent the wrong script. I rang him up and I said, you know, this script you've sent over, I said, this character Lily Lineker, are you sure you've sent the right one? Because it was like Patricia Routledge not available, or what? I mean, what is this about? And my agent said, I've got to be honest with you. He said, I looked at it and I thought, what are they talking about? You know, have I got the right? Anyway, so we went back and we double checked that it was the right thing and it was meant for me. And they came back and they said, 100%, we want Lisa to do it. And this is why I was really flattered, because Rik has wanted to work with me for a really long time. And it's the last opportunity and it's the last step of the series. They really, really want me to do it. So it was a huge confidence boost. And I thought, well, if they think I can do it, then
that's interesting, yeah. Because Digger is actually the first episode of series 2 that went out, but maybe they filmed it. That was the final one they filmed then.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Potentially.
I was right. So if they filmed it last, then this is probably a huge vote of confidence in the episode, because they tend to lead with the strongest episode. So they might rejig things later on. They tend to lead with what they think is the strongest.
I didn't know that was the first step of a new series. I didn't. I just know that we had one opportunity to do it, and it was the last one. So as I said, that's really interesting. It is. It's really an even bigger compliment. You know, amazing.
Had you seen the first series? Were you already a fan of Bottom when the offer came in?
Yeah, I knew the series, because my friend Jan Sewell was makeup designer on it, and we were great mates. And I remember her saying that the audience absolutely lap it up on the night. You know, you never get studio audiences. You have to try really hard, but they're preaching to the converted. Everyone that was in that audience, like on the night, I think in Digger, I think there was I don't know if it was part of a warm-up or not, but my memory makes me think that there was like a fart gag within like the first 5 minutes of the recording. And I never heard an audience reaction like it. It was woof. It was through the roof. And that sort of set the tone. So I was aware of the kind of show it was. I was aware of the talent of Rik and Ade. Of course, you know, who wasn't? Particularly Rik Mayall's nuanced character study, even though it's a very physical performance and a larger than life character, it was always real. So yeah, I mean, and the fact that they'd asked me to be in this episode, I was chuffed to bits. And I, you know, like all my mainstream mates like Les and that were like, well, you're doing Bottom, how did you get that, how did that come about? And I went, I don't know, I've just got this script and they want to work with me, so I'm saying yes. You know, truth be told, I would have paid to be in it. then so I basically said yes, and then I went along, and then I got really nervous during the rehearsal period because I knew what I wanted to do with Lily. When I read her, I knew that she couldn't be 27, which was my age. Or actually, when I think about it now, she probably could have been 27. She probably would have been a 27-year-old virgin, I think.
Yeah. Do you think there was some chemistry between Lady Lineker and Richard, with both being virgins at such a late age?
But I think yes, exactly. I felt that there was chemistry definitely between those two characters. I have to be honest, I had the worst crush on Rik Mayall anyway, which was quite hard to contain. But you turn up in rehearsals and you're like professional and everything like that, and I knew that what I was going to do with Lily would put any person off, character wise. But yeah, I think there was a real chemistry in that scene. I just felt that we all really enjoyed. I thought the writing was really good in that scene. There were no changes as far as I can remember. Like they weren't, often they're changing things right down to the wire.
Yeah.
I don't remember any changes.
So when you went into rehearsals, how much of the ideas that you brought when you went into rehearsals stayed, and how much came from Rik and Ade?
They left me completely to my own devices. And I thought when I turned up for rehearsals, 27, I didn't look like Lily Lineker, put it that way. And I thought I better set out my stall really quickly because it's really difficult to play someone like her because I was padded. I was very specific about the suit I wanted her to wear. And I sort of imagined that she'd somebody that would have had her colours done. She would have gone to one of those colour specialists and told her that she was maybe an autumn person or a spring person or a summer person, and she would have had all her colours done and she would have worn all the colours that went with that. And I was even right down to the watch. I said that she's one of those people that would have those watches where you can change the colour face to match what you're wearing. And I made the costume designer find me one of these watches on a gold bangle. And she did, bless her, she came up with it. And I said she's going to have mousy brown, hot brushed hair that she would curl back like she'd taken out of rollers, but she would do it with a hot brush and just brush it through. So everything was in its place because it was all about how you present yourself, because you won't get a boyfriend unless you look like you put yourself together properly, And I don't think she's probably ever had a boyfriend, to be honest.
Yeah. It's interesting you say about the chemistry, obviously, in the scene, because I've always thought it seems like Lily is ready to go out with Richie when he starts saying,
you can kill him and stuff.
Yeah, it's a smashing blouse you've got on and all that.
Yeah, but, I think she probably had a bit of a flutter down somewhere, but I think she was probably brought up maybe. I mean, as a good girl who shouldn't do those sorts of things. So I think she probably enjoyed talking about getting other people together more than she could ever go that far herself. And that maybe there was a kinship there because he was very polite with her, wasn't he?
Well, he negs you, doesn't he? He gives you, but you respond well to the negging, a bit ragged around the edges. You don't just tell him to fuck off. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think she's a bit taken aback by that, but she's very polite.
Absolutely.
I think she probably needed, if I'm absolutely honest, looking back at it now, because she was so anal about every aspect of her personal appearance, I think she needed a good scene too, really. I think on her own dating agency and found herself somebody first,
That was maybe her motive to try and meet someone. Yeah, we like playing around with what the backstory of characters are on Butter, so I like that you really thought that through about her look and everything. And did the accent just kind of come through naturally for you when you read the script?
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought she should be ever so slightly northern, but didn't.
Great voice.
Didn't want to be northern. Wanted to, a bit posher. Not that northern people are posh, but I thought that she everything about her was quite all about on the surface. I think. Do you know what she reminds me a little bit of? She reminds me a bit, not physically, but the way she presents herself, a bit like Shirley Ballas.
Oh yeah. yeah, I can see that.
How Shirley does with her hands, and it's all about presenting and and it's lovely what you're doing with your feet, with the freckle or whatever. I can imagine that the I don't know, there is such a similarity. Anyway, that's probably not very flattering.
She was absolutely like a real character. I think, Rik and Ade obviously wrote those lines. It is a fantastic scene, and you brought her to life though, and that is like in such a small amount of time. It's such a memorable character, Lily Lineker.
So it's so of all of the characters that have been in it as well. All of the brilliant episodes, and I think they're all slightly iconic in their own way, aren't they now? Because we don't have Rik anymore, and we don't see the likes of that sort of comedy. It was really brave, wasn't it? Really, really brave.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Helen Deborah as well, who's become a mate over the years. She loved playing Lady Oblomov, Boblamov, Dov, or whatever her name was. And,
do you not remember the line?
I just remember saying a wazzo pair of jugs, and I love saying that line so much. Yes, Lady Oblomov, Boblamov, Dob. I just remember that bit. I can't remember.
Yeah, you're giving some fantastic lines in that scene, but Lady Natasha's full name, I mean, I can attempt it because we wanted to ask whether you'd added in a Smythe, because in the script there's one less.
I did. I added a Smythe. Boblamov, Smithington. Did I say Smithington Smythe?
I'll attempt it. So it's Lady Natasha, Letitia, Sarah Jane Wellesley, Obstromsky, Ponsonsky, Smythe, Oblomov, Boblamov, Dob. Third Viscountess of Moldavia. Yeah, it's such just incredible. And then obviously Eddie coming in with sounds great, we'll have half a dozen, Superb.
I'm happy to just literally, it is one episode of a series that I did, that I've never done one episode in anything where it's had such an impact. It's just one of those things that people always want to talk about. And I wanted to tell you about on the recording on the night. So I was really, really nervous in rehearsal. So I set out my store really, really clearly. I said to Rik and Ade, I won't be looking like me. So because the way I look, it's not funny, and I've got an idea for her, and they said, oh, just do what you want, we know it'll be great, don't worry about it. And so I'd have to go through all the tech rehearsals, and the crew would turn up and think, what's she doing? She's a 27-year-old that's talking like she's about 50 sort of. And so it was quite a nerve-wracking experience. But on the night, everyone knew what I was doing because I was in costume and I was sat in the makeup room, and Rik came over to me and he said to me, I just want to say, if I say anything weird or I do anything strange, or I just want you to know I get so nervous that I'd say weird things and do weird things. Don't be offended or whatever he said, because I'm literally, and he's an absolute bag of nerves, and he's sick before the recording. Physically throwing up. So he gave so much so that we could get that brilliant performance. And how generous though to come to me make a point of saying, if I'm a bit weird or I'm a bit off or I'm a bit, I say something strange or whatever, it's just because I'm so shit scared.
Would you see that sort of melt away as soon as action was called?
Gone. Nothing. No sign whatsoever. A man completely in his comfort zone in front of an audience, making them laugh, but not like some people that you see, or I've worked with people in the past where they just succumb to it and they lose that wonderful truth that Rik was able to hang on to throughout all of it. He was just a genius.
Yeah, you see people guest in sitcoms a lot, and sometimes they're just there in the scene with the main people as kind of a bit of a stooge to them, and other times, as in your case, they're very much their equal and they're throwing out funny lines as well, and it's an equal match between the two. What's it like playing opposite Rik and Ade in a scene like that, where your lines are getting the laughs as well, but you're also giving a performance as good as theirs?
Oh, well, that's really kind of you. That's really, really kind. I'm unbelievably flattered by that. I never felt myself equal to Rik and Ade. First of all, they write this stuff as well, so that's quite intimidating because that they have an idea of how it should look and sound and everything. Testament to them and their generosity as actors, because they approach it like actors. we're all equal in the scene and we're all making a contribution. I knew that my job was to be funny. That's all I had to do. I had to be real and I had to be funny. And they enable you to do that. They completely enable you to do that. So it was a joy. It was a joy. And then, you know, on the night when you get your first laugh, that's it. We're in. And I'm meant to be here. And I've got my laughs on my lines where I'm supposed to get them. You're getting laughs, like massive roars on your lines where you're supposed to get them. It just felt like everything went very well and right. And I don't remember doing any retakes, to be honest.
Brilliant.
So it was just one take that.
I think so. I mean, that's what you want that's what we all go for, because you can't get an audience to laugh again the same way. So, you know, everybody tries to get it like it's live, and you turn up and you go in there and you mean business, and you've got to get the laughs. That's what sorts the men out from the boys. And I don't remember actually having to go again on any of it. Even the bloody name, which gave me nightmares. I don't think we. I mean, unless I know you've spoken to Ed By, unless he'll probably, you know, say we did 25 takes in my memory of, but I don't think I ever went again on any of it.
You obviously got a great reaction from the audience on the night. You can hear that on the recording. In terms of afterwards, did you get much of a response from people who'd seen the episode? You know, do you get the lines quoted at you much at all?
Oh yes. Oh, I get the lines. Or if people are Bottom fans, they don't dabble in Bottom. I take this the wrong way, but they're like obsessed. But you know what I mean? People actually on Twitter, I get pictures of me. People are putting up all the time, and then quoting a line with a picture of Lily Lineker. I'm just trying to think what the line I get quoted most.
For some reason, I'm imagining
was a pair of jugs and the lady Natasha's name. I would imagine.
The name is good. You know, there's another one as well.
I think Sarah Ferguson, surely.
Sarah Ferguson's quite a good one. Yeah. Oh no, so someone like Michelle Pfeiffer. And he said
Kim Basinger. Kim Basinger. That's it. Kim Basinger. And he says no, Kim Basinger. Yeah. So how come this dating agency obviously doesn't have Kim Basinger? That's a ridiculous thing, but does have Sarah Ferguson. What's the consistent?
Yes, exactly. Well, Sarah, I suppose the point they're making is that maybe Sarah Ferguson's a little bit lower rent. I don't know. Yeah. And she was also, had she just recently become available? Had she split up with Prince Andrew or something like that? Maybe she was. I
think that might have been the context at the time. I always thought it's just someone's name who's Sarah Ferguson, because it could be quite a common name, and Eddie reads it as Fergie.
But isn't there a Lady Jane? You know, in the long name. Is it Lady Jane Fellows or something, did you say? That's a real person, isn't it?
No, it's Lady Natasha. But yeah, you're right. I think there is a Lady Jane Fellows, but no, it's Lady Natasha Letitia that Helen Lederer plays. But yeah, they obviously had fun thinking of the names, didn't they?
Completely. And they were fearless as well. I mean, the slapstick element as well. I'm interested in that particularly because as somebody that, you know, we were talking earlier about mainstream versus alternative comedy. Had somebody perhaps like Russ Abbot done such blatant physical slapstick comedy, I don't know if it would have translated as well. They took their cartoon characters, obviously made them very, very real. But I just wondered, because they had such credibility, that they could have done the most mainstream, broadest type of humour, and we still would have bought it. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's because, I don't know why that is. I mean, I'd love to know why such blatant slapstick, you know, like Eric Sykes was doing the plank, things like that, all that physical mime kind of humour back in the day. And I mean, that was actually very clever. That was probably not the best example, but you know, something as broad as that done by a broad comedian might not have been as well received. Do you know where I'm going with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the sort of the cartoonish violent slapstick is what makes the show quite so unique, and why there's not really been anything like it since?
Well, it is violent. I mean, they're not cartoon characters. They're real people beating the out of each other. So Maybe. I also don't think anyone else could pull it off.
Yeah.
I think it's the writing, the balance of the crazy stuff that they did, that you just, when he's pretending that he's in the polo lounge and all that sort of thing, when Lady Natasha comes around, and it's so ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous, and yet it's completely believable. And I don't think many actors or comedians can do that.
What do you think of the characters of Richie and Eddie? Because they're also quite unique in the world of sitcom, aren't they? And that they're the leads in something, but they're quite sort of perverse and grotty.
They're tragic. They're really tragic. I think they are two tragic characters that are they're codependent on each other. I think, and I would, if one of them got a girlfriend and the other would just be devastated if he left. I mean, I think this is the thing, that we can talk about Bottom in real depth, because there's so much pathos with the two characters. They need each other. They're two of life's misfits that have, thank goodness, found each other, because no one would live with either of them.
Yeah.
But they live together, and it's a totally dysfunctional relationship. I mean, there's a lot of physical abuse of each other, but they love. But there's a real love, I think, too.
It's a love-hate marriage with a lot of domestic violence between the two of them.
Ton of domestic violence. I mean, like bashing each other around the head with frying pans, and we wouldn't get away with it now, would you?
Of all the episodes that you've seen, do you have one it doesn't have to be your episode. Have you got one that's a specific favorite for you?
I think it's my episode. I'm really sorry.
I mean, obviously, but why wouldn't you be? All those other episodes are not going to have the background knowledge and those emotional memories.
I mean, obviously, I'm emotionally invested in that episode, but isn't there that scene in the episode where where he's got the manual? Is that
where he has the joy of sex?
Yeah, and that whole scene just with him on his own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember watching it in rehearsals and thinking, how's he going to do this? And how is it going to not just be really seedy and horrible and like some dirty old pub in a bedsit, and how is anyone going to laugh at that? It's just too gross. And he just, I was going to say pulled it off, but that's probably not. He literally, I understood and believed every single moment in that, and he wasn't playing it for laughs. I mean, he kind of was playing it for laughs, but it always came from the truthful place. And that whole scene just on his own with that book, I just thought was wonderful, genius.
I mean, as a female comedy fan, I've often found people are surprised when I say Bottom's my favourite sitcom, because it's such a masculine show and it explores, as you say, very kind of masculine topics.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts on the idea that that therefore girls wouldn't enjoy comedy like Bottom? Because as you say, there's just a truth there, isn't there, to the characters?
I think it's I think it's really brave. I think they're making men look a bit ridiculous sometimes. I don't think they're celebrating men having a quiet moment over an edition of Joy of Sex. I don't think they're celebrating that. I think they're showing that it's difficult for men to communicate with women. They're telling it from a truthful perspective. I don't think it's sexist. I don't think and I think women like seeing men. I also think there was a culture at the time that was quite laddie, which might have helped. But the fact that the episodes still stand up today, when we're all a lot more socially aware than we ever were, I think is because they're not celebrating men sexualizing women. They're showing two misfits trying to fit into society, and it's difficult. It's difficult now. It was difficult then. Not a lot has changed. When boys find it hard to communicate with girls, and I think they were just a little bit kind of backwards in coming forwards with the opposite sex, and that's as far as I think that's as bad as I think it is.
Absolutely.
I think girls love to see it was real blokey humor, but I never felt alienated by it.
No.
Did you?
No, never. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely fell about laughing at every single moment in it. And, characters like you coming in, obviously, and then you show that Lily herself is obviously clearly a lonely heart, and
Yeah. I mean, they're lovable, aren't they? I mean, they're really lovable people. They're, with all the flaws, all of the dysfunctional behaviour, the beating up of the two guys beating out of each other, on a regular basis, but one supporting the other as well, through meeting a girl and helping him when the lady thingy comes round, and I say thingy because it's so much easier, I think there's a lot of love there.
Yeah.
Did you ever catch any of the live shows they did? Because they did the spin-off live shows and tours.
No, I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. I feel awful. I'm sure.
Feel awful.
Yeah, no, I feel because I mean, obviously, in retrospect, seeing Rik perform on a stage is not something we get to do now.
During your episode, so you were there for the whole time, even though you were only in the one scene. How long were you on set for?
Every day. It was shot over a period of a week, and you were there at the BBC rehearsal rooms every single day from 9 till 6 or whatever. And then you'd go in on the end of the week, the Friday and the Saturday, have 2 days in the studio to record. I think it was 2 days, or did we do the whole thing live in front of the audience? I think they pre-recorded some of it. I mean, you probably know more than I would.
On Bottom, what they would normally do is they'd have 2 studio days, and the first day would be if there was anything complicated, like a fight sequence or a big stunt, like a sofa crashing through the ceiling or something like that. They do that on the first day and get it all pre-recorded.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, they did, and they played it in to the audience. That was it. Yeah, so it was a 7-day commitment. That's all it was in my life, and I'm still here, years later, talking about the show.
Does it surprise you? Well, both asking the same question. Does it surprise you that people are still talking about it 30 years later?
I think it. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say no because it just doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know. I think Rik not being around anymore, I think it adds another emotional kind of layer to the work, and that we'll never get to see him work again. I think that makes a difference. I am surprised. Is that awful? Is everyone else saying no? I knew it was brilliant when I was.
I think, like you say, like fans of Bottom, like we are. We are very much diehard fans. There's no take it or leave it. You either love it or you either love it or you've never seen it.
Yeah, I think it's one of 2 jobs in my career where I'm still asked to talk about it in such forensic detail, and I have to say, it's also one of the best paid jobs I've ever had. Is that a terrible thing to say? Because I remember being quite skint years later and getting a repeat fee just turn up out of the blue for tens of thousands of pounds because the series had been sold to Australia.
Jesus, that's amazing.
That's one
Fantastic.
Episode. And so I have a lot to thank them for, because I was at that time, I was going through a really difficult time in my life. It was when I'd come back from America. I was doing Grease at the Dominion Theatre in the West End. I didn't know. I mean, I had some issues. I like an eating disorder when I came back from America. It really profoundly affected me in a negative way, that experience, and without going into too much detail. And so I needed to tread water and just do what was right for my mental health around that time. And when that repeat fee landed on my doorstep, it enabled me to take a step back and look after myself for a while. So, and that was one episode. So I'm thinking, God, I got that for one episode. What must they get it for all of those episodes they did? And they wrote it as well, So I have a lot to be grateful to Bottom for. Because I get to, I'm very proud that I was in it, and I still get to talk about something I'm very proud of. There's only, as I say, one other job that I did, and that was a Henson film called The Dark Crystal, where I played the voice of the leading Muppet, Kira. And people are obsessed with that film. People that like that, like Labyrinth, and I go to conventions and things like that about it. So it's only 2 jobs in my life, and that was a whole feature film. This is only one episode where people really, really care about what we all did back then.
Yeah, I think as Ange said, I think it's one of the sort of definitions of cult favorite amongst people. It's sort of it has such a fervent fan base. If you were to sum up Bottom in a couple of lines to someone who'd never seen it before, how would you describe it?
Okay, so if I had to think of 2 words to sum up Bottom,
you can take several sentences. It doesn't have to be words.
Okay, truthful slapstick would be my description. And obviously, if you would give me, I think just Rik and Ade, they're everything. They're all of it. They are absolutely the whole thing from top to bottom. They create these characters. They write these characters. They write great roles for the guests. I mean, I think in the episode I did as well, Kelly Hunter was in it. Was Kelly Hunter in our episode or not? No, she wasn't. She was in another episode. And I remember she was doing cabaret at the time and was so critically acclaimed for her work as Sally Bowles. And she'd been at the RSC and the National, and it's a jewel. It's a little jewel in British comedic history.
I think that's a great summation.
Absolutely. You've been in lots of different British TV shows, though, of course. The Bill was an absolute institution in its heyday. You might not know this, but Richie actually takes the mickey out of the Bill in one of the live shows. You've never watched it. Yeah, like he says he's so bored he could watch an episode of The Bill without vomiting blood, is what Richie says. Which has to be a compliment, right? When popular shows are put in by writers like that.
I think totally a compliment, because obviously it's instantly recognisable by an audience, isn't it? And, it's that big that they can use it as a reference.
Rick was actually in The Bill, wasn't he? In a 3-parter.
He was. Yes, he was. That was a bit before I joined, I think. Yeah, but I mean, like a lot of good actors, it was,
all the best actors have been in The Bill.
I would say it was like definitely an actor's rite of passage, and obviously got Edward Woodward's done it, and Ron Moody, and everyone. I mean, like Baby Spice was in it. Paul O'Grady did a guest appearance. It was a great show, and a lot of people still really. I mean, that's another one that I spend a lot of time talking about. Actually, people still, because the reruns are on, I think, still every day, or still really tune into it. So, I'm really proud to have been part of that as well. It was a great show.
I hope the repeat fees for that are as equally rewarding.
No, nowhere near.
Sorry.
I mean, they were. I think anything that's sold to Australia is quite lucrative. I don't know why that is, but all of my repeat fees from Australia seem to be the best ones.
I thought The Bill was big down there. They even did a Billy Murray special down there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Beach Dancer.
Yeah, it is. It was massive in Australia. I'm involved with a charity called Centrepoint, which is for young homeless people. And I organised a massive Bill reunion recently where we had like 30 odd characters, and we did a Zoom, and as everybody did during the pandemic, and raised a bit of money for the charity. We had Dan McPherson, who was an Australian actor who was like sort of airdropped into the Bill because they wanted to obviously play to the fact that the Australian audience were loving it. And he came on and did the Zoom call. And, we had a ton of people that came on the call from Australia even to this day. So, yeah, it was massive down there. They did a Billy Murray special, didn't they? Where, what was the character?
Beach Down Under? Was that what it was called?
Yeah, Beach Down Under. Yeah, they did that Don Beach went out there and did a couple of episodes. Yeah, it was a brilliant show. And I mean, I'm really grateful for that, because that gave me an opportunity to kind of cross over a bit from doing all the sketch shows and all the comedy. I'd done In Deep previously on the BBC and loved that with Nick Berry and Steve Tompkinson.
Yeah. I loved In Deep. It was a brilliant series.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Peter Jukes wrote that. Brilliant writer. Yeah, so that was fun, about undercover coppers, wasn't it? About undercover coppers and how far they go. And I think there's been something recently about undercover policemen sleeping with members of the public which apparently they have. It's part of the job when they go undercover. Because
I bet it is.
Yeah, probably Elise said the better about that at the moment.
Yeah, we'll leave that one there. But yeah, that's what that show explored. How far is it okay to go when you're undercover? So yeah, then when I was asked to do the Bill, I initially was offered a part as Paul Usher's sister, but I couldn't do it because I'd appeared in it 12 months previously as Michael Elphick's wife. Remember Michael Elphick, the actor? Michael?
Yeah.
I was briefly played his wife in it, and then they wanted me to play Paul Usher's sister, and then I couldn't do it because they've got a 12 on the bill. Was a 12-month rule that if you have to wait 12 months before you can appear as another character. So I couldn't do it, but the casting director said, I'm going to get you in, whatever happens. And I thought that was really nice. And I thought, yeah, I'll never hear again. And then within months, I was asked to go back and meet the exec producer about this new regular character they were bringing in. It was a straight offer, 2 years on the show. I'd never done 2 years on anything. And it seemed like such a long time. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do like 2 years on something. I don't know why I thought that. It was a great opportunity. It sounds really grand, doesn't it? But it just seemed like, as gypsies, as actors, you never do anything for that long. That really grown up commitment. And so, and then they explained what the character was about. This woman who was a forensic psychologist who had a child by somebody that she didn't know, but had been a child murderer and had reformed and turned his life around. And so she was on a mission to find out if it was nature or nurture when people kill people. Is it, So I thought, oh, this sounds interesting. And then I was working with Howell Bennett, the actor Howell Bennett, who was coming in as a serial killer. And I had a lot of scenes with. I thought, oh, this is so great. And yeah, and then I think sort of 7 and a bit years later, I, was still there and loved it, and I was very, very, very grateful. I learned so much on that show. You guys watched The Bill, or were you too busy? Watched Bottom, no. Only 10. How many episodes of Bottom were there? Just 10, I think.
18.
18.
3 series of 6.
I think we're all fans of The Bill, and myself and Matt have worked at Wimbledon Studios a few times as well. So after The Bill shut down, they would rent it out for productions and stuff. So
yeah,
like loads of photos of The Bill throughout the years in the hallways, isn't there?
Yeah. Are they still up there then, all those?
I think they've renovated it now, but back in sort of like between 2010 and 2013, any low budget movie that needed like a police set would go down there, or a hospital with the green walls. Yeah. You still see now, anytime there's like a street set or a back lot in an advert or a music video, it's always Wimbledon.
It was Deer Park Road, wasn't it? The studios.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have so many fond memories, and I mean, we spent so many years in that building, and I remember it being. I'd left not long before the show came off, and I just remember how heartbreaking it was for everybody moving out of that building and taking down pictures. It was nice to know there was still a few left up, but they literally had to dismantle the whole thing. And crew members that have been on that show from the very beginning, it had been their lives, and they were, the whole family analogy that everyone uses about soaps and ongoing drama, it really, really was at the Bill. And it was testament to that the show got made, because it was 2 hours of drama with really high production values. And it was because of those people that happened. And then when they were told that it was coming off the air, it was a real, blow. And so sad to just see. I mean, a lot of these people now you run into. When I did a little stint on Hollyoaks, and I've just done an episode of Casualty, and a lot of them are on Casualty now because they're all so proficient at making great drama really quickly. It was lovely to see a lot of them still working, but it was really, really heartbreaking at the time because it didn't make any sense to anyone why it came off. We were given a whole bunch of reasons why, and none of it really added up. And I think at the end of the day, I think it was a mistake from what I can work out, that actually it was a financial decision that basically ended up being a negotiation that should never have happened. And then I think it came to a sharp point where it was either yes or no. And then with that, thousands of people's livelihoods went, and favorite shows, one of the viewers' favorite shows was taken off the air. And of course, there's all this talk about it coming back and all of that. But I don't know. I think they'd have to, I think the thing that worked about the Bill was that it was one of those shows that didn't pretend to be CSI. It was those two sets of feet walking down the road, very, very simplistic, and the theme everybody was comfortable with, and you could watch it and have your dinner at the same time when you came in. It wasn't too taxing mentally to follow the plot. And I don't know if we would perhaps nowadays, I think we expect something a bit more than that, really.
Yeah, I think TV these days is a bit more focused on grabbing your attention every sort of 5 seconds, isn't it? Yeah. It's designed for people with short attention spans.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. You have to, and I think because obviously like with globalization and all the social media and stuff, people do lose interest very quickly. But nothing's allowed to breathe anymore, is it?
No. It's interesting what you were saying earlier about the Lisa Maxwell show and your sketches being, I know that, like, there's one online that I could find, Doris Potty, the medium.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's a 7-minute long sketch, which you just would not find now.
No, and I think that's too long. I think we could have got the scissors in there a bit more. I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote a few sketches just to give them an idea of the kind of thing I like to do. Yeah, I think we should have got the scissors in there a bit earlier. And also, I'm not sure I was ready, really. I mean, I'd never done stand-up, and I was going out and doing my own warm-up before every show. You know, a 20-minute warm-up with an audience before the show, so that they could get to know me. So
they're not going to heckle you, though, are they, in that situation? You imagine?
Yeah, well, it's still really nerve-wracking because, I mean, they might not heckle you because they've got, well, you'd like to think because their tickets were free that they don't think they've got but, they can not laugh, which, is the worst thing one can ever do when you're trying to do a comedy show. So you go out and you try and introduce yourself and get a bit of yourself over. And I remember having to do something as myself in the show as well. And I didn't know who I was. And they put me on this stall, this like light entertainment high stall, which I'm only 5'2", and most of the time I spent worrying about whether I was going to fall off and if I would get back up and not look a twat trying to get back on it again. I had to do this thing with Mark Walker, who was Roy Walker's son, who still is Roy Walker's son. And he was represented by Mike Hughes, and we sort of inherited him as part of the package for my show, which was how a lot of it worked in those days. A lot of very powerful managers told BBC executives who was going to be in the show. And so we kind of, I was told Mark was going to be in the show, and we sort of had to decide to what degree and how we would use him and create the space for him and I to work. And so they did this thing where we're a bit like a double act, where he was a really sort of interfering pain in the arse type of person, and I'm trying to tell a story, and I'm trying to sort of shut him up like he's some sort of, badly behaved child. And I just come out of this whole thing as like a really kind of bossy control freak who wants the stage all to herself. And this was for me was a great example in how difficult it is to do stuff as yourself, doing stand-up. You have to be somebody that people like. They have to be on side, and they have to engage in you and like you to let you take them where you want to take them. And what if you want to have a rant about British Rail or whatever, or the tube or menopause or whatever it might be, they have to care about you to get into it and get involved. And that takes years and years of perfecting and trying things out in front of a live audience. And I didn't have that. I went straight into the Lisa Maxwell show at the age of 27, never having stood as myself in front of an audience. And, I'm proud that I did it because I thought it was a really brave thing to take on. But in retrospect, I think I should have said, I don't want my name in the title. I shouldn't do the Lisa Maxwell show. I should call it something else. And then when I know what I'm doing, put my name in it and be, and do it that way. But it was, I kind of just went along with things that were happening to me. And I'm glad I've done it. And it created a great opportunity in America for me to have that experience. But I have so much respect for people that do stand up. The people that I adore, like I adore John Bishop. And I think the reason he's so successful and the reason I really engage with his material is because I really like him. I feel like I know him. I feel like I know that the sort of dad he is, the sort of husband he is. And those layers take years and years and years of perfecting.
And we've talked before, obviously, about double acts, and obviously Rik and Ade had that as a double act, and you worked with Russ Abbot, and obviously Les Dennis and him were a bit of more of a separate entity, but they almost became a pairing, didn't they? And having that comedy partner with you must really, really help, I imagine, when you're up on stage, which you didn't have. You were there as part of different sketches with.
Completely, sort of, both of us like airdropped into this situation, not knowing how the other really works. Not having the trust, for example, that comes with knowing that somebody I mean, a lot of people that work in comedy, I've done some great pilots, for example. Like I did a pilot with Omid Jalili and Stephen K. Amos that was written by Simon Nye, that wrote Men Behaving Badly, was directed by Tony Dow, who did all of The Only Fools and Horses. A great pedigree, and it didn't get picked up. It was a pilot that was done on BBC Two, first of all. Then they recast some of the people in it, brought me into it, and then it was going to be made for BBC One. Omid was exec producer on it. And there are moments where it could have been, you've got all of these comedians. So you've got Stephen and you've got Omid. And at that point, Aisling B was playing a part of, because basically the whole thing was set, I played a landlady who had a house in Streatham. And Stephen K. Amos was a Nigerian character that was renting a room off me. And Omid Jalili was an Iranian character who was renting a room off me. And Aisling B played an Australian traveller who was like on a backpacking thing on a gap year or whatever. And she was staying in my house. And basically Omid was running a multi-million corporation from this one room. He had a battered up old Rolls Royce, and he ended up completely exploiting the new Nigerian that had come over. But everybody played it for truth. And I think that this wasn't that long ago. So I think comedians now are a lot more generous than they were back in the day of like Russ and Les and people like that. Russ and Les, lovely people, but comedians try to sort of, when they're just like sort of like gag merchants, if you like, they try and be the funniest on the bill because it was always about being top of the bill. Whereas comedians now are more like actors. They're more interested. This is what I think. I mean, I could be totally wrong. And if you guys, I lost you then. If you guys disagree, then jump in. I think that it's a lot more team spirit now than it was back in the days when people wanted to top the bill.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you see a lot more collaboration between people. There was a bit of a kickback against the show. The people on the show Mock the Week because that sort of encouraged an adversarial atmosphere where you had to interrupt people in order to get your joke out before they could get theirs out. But then you see you see more things are more about just people having conversations, and there's less sort of I'm going to talk over you so I can get my punchline out quicker.
Yeah, because I think punchlines are nothing without you liking the person that's delivering them. I'm glad you agree. I see funny people these days on the telly, and they're nice. They seem like nice people rather than gag merchants, if that makes sense.
I think people tend to have a bit more of an idea of the end goal of the team rather than, trying to stand head and shoulders above everyone else to try and get noticed. I'm quite intrigued by the pilot you mentioned, Lisa. Would you mind telling us what it's called and if it's, I know you said it didn't get picked up, but is it available anywhere to watch?
It's called Navid and Johnny.
Right.
It wasn't transmitted, so I doubt you'll find it. But yeah, great pedigree. I mean, really good pedigree. I mean, another pilot I did where I played Ray Winston's wife. It was directed by, it was a BBC pilot. So directed by, God, he's dead now, actually. I mean, he did all the great sitcoms. It will come to
Bob Spears?
I played husband. Huh?
Bob Spears? No?
The director?
Yeah.
Say again?
Bob Spears.
No, it wasn't Bob Spears. No, I know Bob Spears. No, it begins with a V, I think. He had long hair. I keep thinking it's Piers something. He was very posh, very creative, brilliant man. Oh, it will come to me. I'll look at. I'll tell you what. I'll have a look and I'll let you know after on an email. I'll check it. So Ray and I were playing husband and wife, and we lived with his parents, and we ran a junk shop, and we're a little bit down on our luck, so we've had to move in with his mum and dad. And again, great pedigree. Ray was hilarious in it, and it was about to go, and then Nil by Mouth came out, the movie with Ray in the lead, and his career just went stratospheric after that. And so it's a bit like, when's he going to have time to do this sitcom? And then he just said no, and it got shelved. But I have to say, working with actors doing comedy is a much more enriching experience. And I think Rik and Ade approached Bottom in exactly the same way. They were real people.
And they will always be remembered by fans of Bottom. It will be forever immortalised, much as your performance as Lily Lineker will always be immortalised under those wonderful pads and that wonderful hair.
Oh, bless her. I know, and that little tiny little patent belt thing she had on, and even her name. I love her name. Like, you know, they're so clever.
Alliteration's always good in comedy, isn't it?
I guess it is. Yeah, Lily Lineker. Yeah, it's like a vocal warm up, isn't it? It's like red leather, yellow leather. Lily Lineker. Thank
you very much for joining us today, Lisa. We'll let you go, but we'll just finish on. Is there anything you're working on that you've got coming up that you'd like to plug?
Not right. Oh, yeah, the Casualty episode I think goes out in December. So okay. This is a very. I don't know what it's going to look like. I've got to be honest. I am playing the surrogate mother of a young woman. Of my character's daughter was born without a womb, and I decide to have my eggs frozen, and I am a surrogate for her. And I'm playing. I mean, this is really upsetting. They did ask me, and they said, "Would you be happy? We know you don't look it, but it's better for the story if we say that she's 60." I'm 57, and they said it's better if we say she's 60. And I said, "Fine." So I've got this terrible thing in my mind that they've gone away and done some weird thing on the gradient of the film and turned me into some kind of Gollum type character. But anyway, so you'll see me in labour as well, which will be slightly disturbing on Saturday night while you're having your dinner.
That's amazing. I look forward to that. I shall record that.
I really wouldn't look forward to it. If you've got any other offers, I would take them.
Yeah, absolutely. Lily Lineker, there we go. You've heard it here first, is going to give birth live on Casualty.
Live. They did a live episode of The Bill, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, they did a couple actually. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us here today, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been great reminiscing with you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
You're the best.